Avoidants try to manage relationships by staying distant, as if emotional distance is their only form of protection. For them, connection doesn't mean closeness, it means control, so when you go no contact, it doesn't shock them, not right away. They often see it as a game, a silent protest, one they believe they can outlast, but then time passes and nothing happens. You don't reach out, you don't ask for closure, you don't create drama, and that's exactly where their entire emotional script begins to unravel. In this video, we'll explore what avoidants secretly expect during no contact, what they're hoping for, even if they never say it out loud. It's not just a survival mechanism, it's the protection of ego, the echo of old childhood wounds, a complex structure built on the fear of true intimacy. But when that structure quietly begins to collapse, the avoidant starts to feel all the emotions they've been avoiding for years. This video is for those who've poured their emotional energy into one-sided connections and now wonder if their silence during no contact ever reached the avoidant at all. You'll see that your silence wasn't just an absence, it became a mirror, and for the first time, it made them confront themselves. If you've ever seen an avoidant look confused, even startled, when you stop chasing, this video will give voice to what they could never articulate. Because no contact isn't just space. For an avoidant, it becomes a truth they weren't ready to see. The avoidant expects you to understand them without them saying anything. Avoidants don't express their emotions, they don't state clear boundaries or articulate needs. Yet, despite all this, they quietly expect you to understand them. They want you to interpret their silence, decode their distance, and somehow grasp what's behind their contradictory behavior without them having to explain. It's an unrealistic expectation that you'll keep absorbing their emotional complexity without ever asking for clarity. During no contact, they may seem calm or indifferent on the surface, but deep down they still expect you to analyze their behavior, to guess why they disappeared, why they didn't respond, or why they went quiet. Because avoidants don't feel safe using emotional language, they rely on you to be their translator, and when you stop doing that, when you stop romanticizing their silence and start demanding clarity, it creates anxiety in them. Because for the first time, someone isn't trying to figure them out. For the first time, someone isn't carrying their emotional weight for them, and that's the moment when the avoidant is forced to face their own emotional ambiguity. The avoidant expects you to make the first move, just like you always did. The avoidant expects you to reach out first, just like you always did. The avoidant rarely says anything clearly, but inside, there's an unspoken agreement that always exists: I'll pull away and you'll come back. It's not a conscious deal. It's a psychological rhythm that's repeated over and over. You always paused, understood, tried to fix things, and they always pulled back, shut down, and stayed silent. So when no contact begins, they assume this is just another round of the same cycle. They withdraw deliberately, emotionally disengage, but somewhere deep inside, they're quietly expecting you to return, the same way you always did. And when you don't come back, that old unconscious deal breaks. A strange kind of restlessness awakens. It feels like some invisible control has slipped from their hands. Avoidants find comfort in staying distant, as long as you're the one holding the relationship together. But when you go quiet, for the first time, they see the emptiness inside themselves like a mirror. For the first time, they realize that you were doing all the emotional labor, and now that you've done nothing, there's nothing left. This isn't romantic longing, it's an egoic shock. Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you reach out? These questions disturb them deeply, because they always believed there'd be a space for them in your heart, no matter what. And this is the moment when no contact stops being a game for the avoidant and becomes a mirror, reflecting their own avoidance back at them. The avoidant assumes you'll still prioritize their emotions, even if they confused and hurt you, even if they brought ambiguity into the relationship, sent mixed signals, or pulled away emotionally. They still expect you to understand their internal conflict, to endure it, and to put their feelings above your own. When no contact begins, they're not immediately in shock, because they assume your silence is only temporary. They believe you're still somewhere thinking, is he hurting right now? Was I too harsh? Should I check on him? They assume you'll keep putting yourself aside and center their feelings the way you always have. But as time passes, and you don't return, that fantasy starts to crack. For the first time, they begin to feel that maybe you've finally learned to value your own emotions more than theirs. And that's the moment where their ego and vulnerability start to collide. The avoidant expects you to blame yourself and reach out first. They know that in the past, you've repeatedly blamed yourself. Maybe I upset him. I shouldn't have pushed so much. He's distant, maybe because of me. When no contact begins, they assume your silence won't last long because guilt will eat at you. They believe you won't be able to handle the quiet, and you'll eventually find a reason to come back because you always looked for your fault first. But if you don't return, that internal narrative begins to fall apart. The avoidant becomes quietly surprised that this time you didn't blame yourself, you respected the distance, and that's where they begin to feel isolated, because now guilt can no longer be used as a form of emotional control. The avoidant expects you to stay emotionally available even in silence. During no contact, even though the avoidant is the one pulling away, they still quietly assume you'll remain emotionally connected. You may not be reaching out, but in their mind, your heart is still in the same place, waiting, soft, open. It's an unspoken belief that you won't withdraw your love, that you'll still feel warm whenever they look back, that your emotional door will always be open. But as time passes and you start to change, that emotional presence they relied on begins to fade. Avoidants are used to people being emotionally available because they themselves aren't fully present, and their partner becomes the emotional anchor. So when you begin to emotionally detach, they get confused, because this is something they never loudly ask for, but always silently expect. And that's the moment when they start to realize you haven't just walked away physically, you're starting to walk away emotionally too. The avoidant expects you to still idealize them, as if they're still special in your eyes. Even if the avoidant keeps their distance on the surface, deep down they want to be seen the same way you once saw them, as someone special, complex, misunderstood, maybe even a little different. During no contact, they often assume that you're still viewing them through the same emotional lens, that same lens that once made them feel rare, like a soul only you could truly understand. They want to be idealized, even in your silence. But this desire isn't about seeking attention. It's rooted in a deeper fear that if you stop seeing them as unique or irreplaceable, they'll be forced to question that belief about themselves. Much of the avoidance identity has been unconsciously shaped by the emotional validation you once gave, in your presence, in your patience, even in your pain. So when you go emotionally neutral during no contact, when the reflection of their specialness disappears from your eyes, they start to feel invisible. And that's what disturbs them the most. Not your silence, not your distance, but the fear that maybe, now, you don't see them as deep anymore. They'll never say this out loud, but during no contact, the avoidant secretly hopes that you still see them as exceptional, even when they're doing nothing exceptional at all. The avoidant always believed that emotional distance would keep them safe, that the more they withdrew, the more control they'd maintain. But no contact becomes the space where that illusion of control quietly collapses. When you go silent, and the old pattern of you reaching out doesn't repeat, something starts to stir inside the avoidant. Did they get tired of me? Are they really gone this time? Do they no longer see me the way they once did? These aren't just questions of love, they're wounds of the ego. For the avoidant, intimacy is never full surrender. There's always one foot out the door, an emotional escape route carefully left open. So when someone actually leaves without noise, without blame, they are unprepared for it. No contact is not a punishment for the avoidant, it is a mirror. In your silence, they see themselves for the first time. They begin to sense that maybe they weren't as irreplaceable as they thought. And for the first time, they're faced with a truth they've avoided for years. That emotional closeness is not something you alone can carry. They will have to bring something too. They will have to lose a little, feel a little, show a little. And none of that can happen unless they step out from behind the walls they built. And this is the moment when no contact stops being just your boundary and quietly becomes the avoidance awakening.